Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show. I am your host, Dr. Will. I am on my spring break. Can't believe it's Wednesday already, but that's not stopping me from putting together a podcast show. I will be talking about digital transformation today with none other than Dr. Courtney Teague. How are you doing, Dr. Teague?
I am super awesome and I'm jealous because my spring break does not start until April, but I do have a couple sick days I can take. So it's okay. It's all right.
I,
I'm not
I
going to
hear you.
complain.
I hear you. I hear you. I actually had a teacher tell me never waste a sick day on being sick.
No, never. Those are mental health days for you to go out and identify who you really are.
I hear you. I hear you. So, for those watching the show, will you please introduce yourself?
All right, well, I'm Dr. Courtney Teague. I'm from Montgomery, Alabama, but I've been in Atlanta since 2006. Oh my gosh, I've taught children with special needs for 9, 10 years. And then in that process, I started developing a passion and an earning to learn more about technology, about transformation and leadership. And here I am, a couple of degrees later, a couple loans owed to Salome later. I'm Dr. Courtney Teague. I'm here.
I hear you. I hear you. Minus the special ed population. I myself, a couple of degrees and student loans later myself. So I hear you. I hear you. Today, again, we'll be talking about digital transformation. And if you've been watching the show, then you notice that digital learning, digital leadership, blended learning, going digital, all of those has been sort of recurring themes that I have been talking about. And the reason I've chosen to do this is because, in my district, we are one environment with several schools, and more devices keep coming, and devices keep coming everywhere. And yet schools are they have their growing pains. Some are being very successful in that transition, and some are having great difficulty. So I wanted to have these discussions, not only for my own benefit to see what I can learn to take back to my school, but as well as for those who watch the show to give them some tips, some pointers, understand how certain successes were able to happen and what can they do differently to not undergo some of the failures that others have encountered. So talking, because we met on Twitter.
Yeah,
Yep.
social media. It was someone, I
It
don't
is,
even remember who it was that introduced us virtually on Twitter. I don't even remember. But
I think it
met
was
on Twitter.
probably Shayna.
Shayna White. That's who it was. Yeah, it was.
Yes. Shout out Shayna White, y'all.
I'll text her later and tell her we shouted her out if she's now watching.
Awesome. So the other day, I saw a meme that mentioned a doctor from the early 1900s. And they said that doctor would be lost if they were to walk into a hospital today. But a teacher from that same era will walk in and be right at home. Why has K through 12 education been so slow to embrace innovation? And what can be done to move public education forward?
Oh, wow. Thinking about education and even thinking about the meme you just mentioned, first, before public education can move forward, there must be a mind shift. It has to be a mind shift. When you look in the medical field, they're always studying for the latest, greatest, best thing. In education, we like to rename strategies. We like to rename models. We don't change anything. We just slap a new name on it. And I think being a former teacher, I have to say this, I wanted to be the person that stood in front of the classroom, the sage on the stage. And I think that education, K-12 in general, we haven't evolved from that because the teacher always wants to be the person with the knowledge, wants to be the person that delivers information to the students. And K-12 education, even public education will not change until there is a mind shift to where teachers are looking and viewing themselves as facilitators. And they must realize that that textbook that you're bringing in is outdated. And the students, they have cell phones in which could teach them a lot quicker than you as a teacher. So I don't know. About just getting education to take one step forward, it will have to start with a mind shift. It has to, and mind shifts are really personal. It takes a lot. It would take a real, oh my God, it would just take a lot.
And that I understand, because that's the work that I'm doing now with my teachers, in terms of, because I always say that going digital is a mindset. Because once we have, we have our devices, and I'm working with teachers, and so many of them still think of teaching in terms of I'm the show and everything goes through me, or I'm going to teach in this traditional way. And when you talk to them and you say, you got 25 Chromebooks, you got 30 Chromebooks in your classroom, that is going to immediately change your environment. And it's going to change classroom management. It's going to change how you work with students, how you grade, how students show mastery. That mindset piece is, as you mentioned, very critical in getting them to kind of think
right
about how do I change. So as more and more technology is brought into schools, what are some of the challenges administrators face when leading schools into a digital environment?
Said earlier that every day there are new devices entering those school doors, entering the school building. We have to ask, and administrators, I've heard administrators say, hey, we don't have the infrastructure in place. We don't have teachers, we don't have resources available that will teach us how to use the tools in an innovative way. So, and rewinding back, yes, leaders could say we want all of these devices, but the question is, can the leaders use the device? So I think with leaders, they need to model what they expect to see in their building. And then everything else, even though it will not be perfect, it will fall into place. The infrastructure is one that's going to be a challenge. Secondly, you're going to have to deal with knots, but it's okay, because it seems as if every dollar store has a cell phone right now. So if you have internet access on that phone, kids should be able to access the internet. And if there are more than enough grants available, so funding may be a challenge for administrators, that means they need to go into the building and find someone that is able to write a grant. Another challenge is how to use this tool. How to use this tool not to replace teachers, but use it as an instructional strategy and use it as a tool to assist and enhance learning. And then other challenges that administrators are going to face is that teacher that has that green lesson plan book or grade book that says, I've been teaching for 20 years. I know science is not going to change. So they have to deal with that as well. So they're going to have to deal with that, and technology is always changing. They're going to have to, the purpose, what's the purpose behind them using the tool? And I think that should be a school-wide decision or a team. So that's one challenge. You need to have your purpose. You got to identify your purpose and identify the people that are going to be your high flyers in your school building.
Excellent, excellent. So in talking about that, what can school leaders do to create a culture of risk-taking? And what do you look for when you visit classrooms?
Wow. As I said earlier, the administrator is the first teacher. So first, the administrator needs to model risk-taking. And it was a quote by Martin Luther King. He said, a genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. I don't think the quote is exactly right, but he said something like that. But school leaders need to realize they're the architects of social, emotional, and intellectual organization of their school. So they need to model the behavior in which they need to see. And the second part of the question was, what do I look for when I go into the classrooms? I look for kids making noise. I don't look for the teacher to be in front of the classrooms. I look for the students to be the ones creating and curating content, and the teacher serving as the facilitator or someone that the student reference. So I don't look for the teacher standing in the front with a slate, with a tablet, showing me that she knows how to slide to the next PowerPoint slide. I look for the kids being the creators. I look for rooms to be a mess with student artifacts. That's what I look for when I go into a classroom. I don't look for straight. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was saying I don't look for desks being in a straight row. That means that's not a conducive learning environment to me.
Okay, so how can blended learning be used to give students ownership in their learning? And what are some of the pitfalls should teachers avoid?
Wow, blended learning. We can't even have a universal definition for blended learning. However, when you think of blended learning, it gives student ownership. It gives students ownership of their learning. It gives them accountability. Because with blended learning, there are different ways you can provide blended learning in a classroom. You can provide blended learning by allowing students to set the pace in which they complete an assignment based on their learning needs. You can make it interest-based. Blended learning can be interest-based based on whatever the student likes. If you give me a task or an assignment that I like, you tell me, hey, I don't have to look in your face and complete it. I can go sit in the hallway with my back against the locker. I will be more prone to do my work and not give you any rebuttal. And I mean, just blended learning gives that, oh my gosh, it just opens so many doors. Because what are some pitfalls that teachers should avoid? Teachers should avoid not having norms. Learning, you need to set your norms and your expectations in the beginning. Allow your students to develop your norms, your blended learning norms, if you're going to incorporate blended learning into your classroom. Know that, hey, I trust you enough that I'm allowing you to determine the way you're going to learn. So I expect for you to do A, B, C, or D. And just have the norms in place. It's all about, it goes back to classroom management. It goes back to classroom management. Another pitfall is that teachers don't understand blended learning themselves. So before you give a student an assignment and you say, hey, I want this to be done in a blended learning style, make sure that assignment, that's feasible, because not all things should occur in a blended learning setting. So you need to make sure whatever you're assigning is reasonable and it's feasible. So if you know there is an assignment that you want to give to the student that they really need that traditional instruction, don't say, hey, here's a blended learning task, I'm gonna turn it into blended learning, because you can't do that. So that means you need to plan. Don't walk into the room the first day and say, hey, I watched this video on Khan Academy, I want you to watch it and complete this worksheet. No, that doesn't work all the time.
Okay, so you just mentioned that there's just so many definitions of blended learning, and we sort of don't have, I guess, a consensus. So how would you define blended learning?
Blended learning to me is education occurring any place, anytime, anywhere. Blended learning is multimedia. It's different tools. It could be paper and pencil, but it could occur, learning, the assignment could occur on the bus. That's blended learning to me. Blended learning is just everything except traditional.
Awesome, awesome. So before we go, I want your advice for schools who they're just unsure about the changes that blended learning will bring within their school. What do you say to them to alleviate some of the concerns they may have?
Oh, wow. Just do it. But no, seriously, I think that the best way to alleviate the concerns of any leaders is first to be in a place of empowerment and let your teachers know that Rome wasn't built in a day. It will not be built in a day. And let them know that blended learning does not have to occur immediately. So the way that can occur, well, the way leaders could alleviate the concern is actually by offering professional development using the blended learning method. So they're modeling what they want their teachers to do. That's one way. Then also let the teachers know that our primary focus is instruction, quality instruction, and that blended learning should be viewed as an instructional strategy. And that blended learning cannot replace rigorous teaching, period. It can't replace rigorous questioning or aligning to objectives or your flexible grouping. You can do all those great things within blended learning, but let them know that it's a strategy and it's not the total outcome for education. But the best way is to model and get that, maybe a group of teachers within your building that are high flyers, that are willing to be those early adopters and try anything. Get those teachers first and everyone else will follow along. Don't try to make blended learning a whole school initiative. In the beginning. Any program or anything you're trying to implement in your building, you should try make it really small when you try to implement blended learning.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks again, Dr. Teague, for being a guest. I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule.
My pleasure. Anytime for education, anytime.
Excellent, excellent. As always, people, you'll be able to check the podcast out on my blog, LinkedIn, SoundCloud, YouTube, and I'll be tweeting this out in ways for you to get in contact with Dr. Teague on Twitter and such. Until next time, invest in you, EDU. Y'all be blessed. Peace.